What is the most important takeaway, according to you, from this book in one sentence?
Develop your mindset, develop your ideas, develop your knowledge, and let your ingenuity define who you are.
What if you turn hardship into grace, anger into serenity? Everything changes. Make your life a masterpiece. So, welcome everybody. Today we really have a live streaming on YouTube with the Sir John Morfaw, the author of The Genuine Billionaire. And really kudos to George and Jumbonga Lekelefak who really connected us. Kudos to George, a dear friend of myself, and to Mr. John Morfaw. Such a blessing. So let's start. Mr. John Morfaw. So let's introduce yourself in one powerful sentence so we get a little bit context who John Morfaw is, besides a brilliant writer.
Yeah, actually, my documentary name is John Morfaw. But I also have a nickname which has actually relegated my documentary name to the background. It's a household name. They call me Johnny Moore. Yeah. I'm a published author and I'm a community leader and I've been involved in so many initiatives. And actually, The Genuine Billionaire is my second book. My first book was on project sustainability because I'm a project manager by profession. So,
That
in the nutshell, that's who I am.
that is brilliant. We will actually do another episode about your first book, but this
Yeah,
time we really talk about The Genuine Billionaire, a brilliantly written book on how to find out and why people, billionaires, become billionaires and what they actually do. Because it's not necessarily that they are greedy. And you unpack this very beautifully because it can really be applied to any one of us, right? So it's really to
definitely.
some
Yeah.
extent genuine living. So just start with what made you interested in thinking and ultimately writing about billionaires.
No, yeah, I'm a researcher. I do a lot of research and I watch a lot of programs on TV. So I was watching, I've been used to watching the Smithsonian Channel, and there was a documentary, The Titans of American Industry, where they profile the lives of people like Henry Ford, Rockefeller, who came after the Industrial Revolution and transformed the American economy. So I did further research and I said, okay, in this century now, we have a lot of people who have transformed the American economy too, but they have done it in another way, not from what Henry Ford and Rockefeller did, and so on. So when I looked at the lives of people like Mark Zuckerberg, Bill Gates, Oprah Winfrey, these are all billionaires who have transformed the society using their knowledge, talents, and skills. They didn't inherit any wealth from anybody. They just used their knowledge, talents, and skills to create wealth and impact the community. So that is why I decided that let me write something about a general topic about this type of people who have transformed the world economy using their knowledge, talents, and skills, and so on. That's how I came up with that title of Genuine Billionaire. And by genuine billionaire, because there are so many billionaires around the world, but I said by genuine billionaires, I'm talking about people who have used their talents, skills, and ingenuity to create wealth and impact the community. That's how I came up with that topic.
That's brilliant. Now, just unpack a little bit your path because you are also a community leader. So, what made you become a community leader? Because you're really involved. You're such a genuine, outstanding human being. And I think really the book also is to some extent a reflection of who you truly are.
Yeah, actually, from childhood, I have been a leader, right from elementary school, secondary schools. I studied in the mission school run by the Italian missions who came to Africa and came to my village and established a secondary school. And while in the school, I was elected the infirmarian. The infirmarian was in charge of the dispensary of the school, and I used to take care of the sick and all that. So from there, I developed some leadership skills and so on. And so when I went to high school, I graduated. Then I was a teacher. I taught French, English to students. Then I created a journalism club to enhance people to increase the ability in English writing and journalism and all that. Then, then I was a leader in the cultural organization. I was a secretary general when I went to the university. So I've been building all those community skills for a long time. But when I came to the US, because I came to the US on a scholarship, and actually after the university, I worked in Cameroon. I was a civil servant. Then I had a scholarship to the US in 1990. And when I came here, in the 90s, I was a community leader. I was elected the president general of my community in the USA in all the 50 states. So I have been a community leader from time immemorial, and that have built up a lot of portfolio for myself over the years.
That's beautiful. I could just go on and talk about your biography, really, you, because it's so interesting. You have so much energy, so much life in you, which is truly a blessing. And especially given the fact that Christmas is approaching. So that's a true gift, really, to the world that you have. And I'm so grateful again that you're on the show, that you are such a brilliant writer, human being, because it's really quite something. But now let's dive into the book. So
Yeah.
what defines a genuine billionaire? Let's unpack that.
Yeah, I said by that word genuine is very unique in the caption of the book. And by genuine, I'm not looking at people who have inherited wealth to become billionaires. I'm looking at people who have utilized their knowledge, talents, skills, and ingenuity to create wealth. That's why I define it as genuine billionaires. Because there are so many billionaires, but I look at genuine billionaires. I've been able to profile like 15 of them. There are so many of them around the world. And technology has come to transform the way people can become billionaires. But I'm looking at people who have actually used their talent, knowledge, and skills to create wealth and to become billionaires and impact the community and transform the economy.
Brilliant. Now let's define wealth because you also define wealth in a very specific and powerful way in the book.
Yeah, wealth is the accumulation of both material and financial elements. It's a combination of both because there's material wealth and there's financial wealth. You know, So wealth is just an accumulation of material and financial elements which makes somebody uh, give somebody a healthy life or a rich life or a prolific life in one way or the other. So we will have so many definitions of wealth, but that is the general definition of wealth. Yeah, because wealth is both financial and material. You know. Yeah.
How does knowledge shape your idea of wealth?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question because there are people who have become wealthy through knowledge, and there are some people who have become wealthy through through experimentation and and inheritance and all that and so on. But if you look at wealth, you must start from knowledge to manage wealth. Because if you don't have knowledge, the wealth will not be well managed. It can disappear and so on. So that's why there's a relationship between knowledge and wealth. Yeah. In order to accumulate wealth, you should have some knowledge about it. And that's why inside the book, I wrote a little piece about knowledge management. Because you have to be able to manage knowledge too in order to have wealth and accumulate wealth and sustain wealth. Because that is where the element of sustainability comes in, where you have to have the ability to sustain wealth. Because we have seen a lot of people who have accumulated wealth, big businesses, but they cannot sustain them because they don't have the know-how, the technical know-how to manage the wealth. And the wealth disappears, and they end up filing for bankruptcies, and the business disappears. So there's always a relationship between knowledge and wealth. Knowledge management, wealth management go hand in hand. You should be able to have enough knowledge to manage your wealth. Even not so, the knowledge, the wealth will disappear, especially in this contemporary world. Yeah, that's the relationship.
Why is that? Why is that? Because it's not necessarily evident, right? You think like someone who makes a lot of, accumulates a lot of wealth and knowledge will automatically remain wealthy. Why is it hard to actually sustain that over a long period of time?
Oh, that's fantastic because you are bringing another element of what I've written on sustainability. Because sustainability is very critical in contemporary business. Because the challenges a lot of wealthy people and billionaires are facing nowadays is how to sustain themselves in the competitive marketplace. Because when you emerge with a lot of wealth, then you are facing a lot of competition from other powerful, wealthy elements around the world. Because I did a seminar on emergence and sustainability. There's a relationship. When you emerge as a wealthy person or as a wealthy entity or as a wealthy country, how can you sustain yourself in a competitive marketplace? There are so many challenges because you look at the economic tech factors, the political factors, environmental factors, individual factors impacting the management of wealth. So there's always a link between that. How to sustain yourself in a competitive environment when you are wealthy or when you accumulate wealth is very tough, especially in the contemporary marketplace. Because of challenges, because of competition, and fluctuation in prices, so many elements. So that's what we're facing.
Now, unpack a little bit knowledge. How can someone acquire knowledge in order to ultimately build wealth? How does this unfold? What's the very first step someone should take in order to acquire some basic knowledge?
So a fundamental thing is education. Something I always advise people: go to school, take classes, study. There are so many forms of education, both formal and informal. Study the fundamentals of management, finance, communication, and all that. You have to pack that package within you. Educate yourself, either formally or informally, before you can engage into a business entity. You know, that's very fundamental. Then there are so many other ways that you can educate yourself just within the community. Either you are partnering with people who are already in the field, who are already well seasoned enough. You decide to align yourself with them, you move, socialize with them, join clubs. There are so many business clubs that you can join to educate yourself, get a lot of knowledge on what type of business you want to initiate, and so on. So those are some of the elements that you can do in order to acquire knowledge, in order to actually sustain yourself in business and and with the wealth that you have accumulated. Yeah.
How do you respond to people who say, don't go to college anymore because it's a waste of time in terms of the environment that we live in now, in terms of generative AI?
I disagree with them. I really totally disagree that you don't have to ignore college. Education can never fail you because I've seen a lot of people nowadays, they just go and get small certifications in IT and start making a lot of money. They don't have academic degrees. But I always encourage them that try to have an academic degree, because when you are doing academics, there are so many courses that you take to enhance your knowledge. You do philosophy, you do education, you do communication, you take some language courses and so on. It helps you to integrate yourself in any community, to communicate with people. So you might be an IT specialist, you are so savvy in computers, but you will need some fundamental knowledge in other subjects in order to interact with other professionals around the world. Because the world economy is becoming so small and so on. So you need to have some, at least some fundamental knowledge in philosophy, in languages, in communication, and you can only have that when you sit in the classroom and take courses. It helps to enhance your knowledge about the world, about the dynamics of the environment that you have to work in. Yeah.
I think it's so important what you're saying because I find this so problematic. And it doesn't matter if it's college or university or trades or whatever it is. But if you go in a school where you learn, for example, a trade over a year, 2, 3 years, it shapes you, right? It's a process because you can't replicate that just by learning, let's say, from generative AI, because the social context, the social interaction, all this is missing. And
Yeah.
so the spirit, right, that lifts us up, that we get from one another, is so tremendous important.
Actually, I always tell people, because college education makes you well grounded. Because besides the academic work that you do in college, there are other extracurricular activities that you get involved in when you're in college. Because in college there are sororities, there are so many sororities that you belong to for socialization. You get involved in political issues while in college, environmental issues while in college, educational issues while in college, so many other things, cultural issues while you're in college. So all those things, they compound the way you have to be well grounded in order to perform and excel in business when you leave college. So I always tell people, education, college makes you well grounded, and so on.
It's powerful what you're saying, well grounded, because that's what you need, right? You need a ground where you can stand on, where you can start developing, right? You can't just unroot all the time the tree, right? You have to let him to really absorb the nutrients in the soil in order to become stronger. And I think that's such a important message, Mr. Morfaw, that you're really giving us, because it's really crucial, also in terms of mental health, really about anything. So, what made you convinced that these forms of education, where you interact with different people, where you get different perspective in order to look at the same issue from different perspective, why do you think this is so important? Probably even more important today than it was 50 years ago.
Yeah, actually, as I told you, I was lucky. I came to the US on a scholarship and as an exchange student, because there are certain programs in the US, they call them exchange program for international students. You come in on the scholarship as an exchange student. And when I came in 1990, we were almost like 200, almost 300 of us who came that year under they call the Council of International Program. The headquarters was in Cleveland, Ohio, as an exchange student. So I came, we were in Cleveland, we were like 50 of us in Cleveland from all countries around the world, from Japan, Germany, Britain, Australia, South Africa, all of us mixed. And all of us were taking the same classes in Cleveland State. All of us were lodged in the same building, paid by the organization. So that interaction a lot gave me a lot of advantage. I learned a lot from all those nationals, because everybody from various countries were presenting their respective countries and so on. So we were there for 1 year. We used to eat together. interact together. We have social activities together. You could perform dances from your country. We learn so many cultural things, the languages from different countries. So that helped to make me well grounded for my studies in the US in such a way that after the program, it was easy for me to do my MBA because I did an MBA after the program. So that was a lot of knowledge for me through that exchange program because it was a multicultural international program. So there's always an advantage in that.
How does consciousness influence decision making, and unpack what you mean by decision making and why it is important, especially in today's world?
Yeah, actually, decision making is very tough, especially in this world that we live in, because there are so many challenges impacting decision making nowadays. 20, 30 years ago, it was easy to make decisions because life was different. There was no technology, there was no internet. I mean, there were no cell phones. Everything was rudimentary. So decision making was a little bit different. It was left in the hands of directors and executives and so on. But now with technology, everything has been so compromised in such a way that decision making has been compounded with a lot of gadgets, a lot of issues, a lot of communications, and so on. So it affects the way the type of decisions that we have to make. And that is why I tell some of the young people that this you have to be very critical in the way you make decisions because you can take a decision now, the next day, either the internet is influences or AI is coming in and the other things are coming to influence what you have decided to do and all those sort of things. So there are so many elements that you have to look into now. And you were mentioning artificial intelligence is very dangerous and critical now because it can distort information at any point and it affect the way the type of decisions that people have to make and so on. And people tend to believe in AI a lot, but AI is some sort of distorting a lot of information online nowadays, and that is very dangerous. The way decisions can be made. Yeah.
So, unpack this a little bit, how it can be dangerous, AI, in terms of decision making.
Yeah, because you see, because I see the people Photoshop issues online and all that, gives false impression about what is trending around the world. Yeah, and that is very dangerous in such a way that if you are making a decision and you may be basing on truth, but for there's false information circulating on whatever thing you are deciding around on the internet, and people are believing in it. So it becomes very dangerous. Who do you believe then? Is it me, the author of the edition, or the false information from AI online? So those are things that government have been trying to see how they can actually AI can be more accountable on what is posted online because it's very dangerous.
Let's unpack this in terms of trends, okay? And you are alluding to a lot of people are just chasing trends, right, to make quick money. How
Yeah,
does trends relate to genuine billionaires? Do genuine billionaires follow trends, whatever it's out there, they follow it, or how do they think about things that are trending?
yeah. Actually, I use that term, the new trends of the millennium, because in this millennium that we live in, there are so many things that are, are happening, and there are so many trends that are actually helping transform people to billionaires. That's a trend because now, 20, 30 years ago, it should have been very difficult for somebody to become a billionaire. 40, it should have been very difficult for somebody to become a billionaire. But because of technology, becoming a billionaire has become very easy. And so that's a trend. That's a trend that we are following now. So that the younger generations are really they are following that trend because the other day I was discussing with somebody. I said when I was in college, We used to stand in a line to buy books from the library. But nowadays, young people don't buy books. I've written a book, nobody's buying it because everything is online. That's a trend. I mean, when we were in college in the 90s, they used to prescribe books. We go and stand in the bookstore, stand to buy them in order to read because there was no internet, there was not at the time. But nowadays, all those things are online. So you write books, people don't buy. Young people don't buy books, but very soon they will be billionaires. So that's a trend. That we are observing. That people are no longer reading from books per se, but they go online and get everything. They Google everything and get it. So they say they don't see any buying books. It's a wonderful trend that we are experiencing.
What do you think is the most important thing to do when you actually read a book? Would you still suggest that people should actually read physical books or at least online books? Or do you think, no, now it's just about Google, it's just about generative AI, and therefore you can get your knowledge? What is the advantage if you actually read a book? Let's say your book, The Genuine Billionaire, from page one to the very end.
Yeah, I would encourage people to read books because luckily this book is published through Amazon. I have the Kindle version that you can read online. Then I have the hard copy version that you can buy. And I encourage people that you can do both. You can go and read the Kindle version, but get the hard copy and create an archives in your house. I always encourage people to create archives for your family because that's a legacy that you are learning down. You don't know what will happen in the next century, but get an archives of books in your house. So you can do both. You can go online and read Kindle versions of books, and you can also have hard copies of it because just reading a book is extra knowledge for you. You can watch TV and see a lot of stuff on TV and so on. Google and see a lot of things, but reading a book because the book is well structured in a particular pattern and the ideas are different from what you might get on TV or on Google and so on. So I always encourage people to do both. Go online. You can read good Kindle versions, but get hard copy for your family and so on and to friends.
That's brilliant. And I think it's also about really integrating the book, what you're reading, right? And you only have and can actually do that by absorbing, by reflecting on the book, right? So, talk
Yeah.
a little bit about why reflection and quiet time is so important. Well, for example, reading a book in order to make it your own. In other words, you become, or it becomes part of you, that you start acting on what you actually are reading.
Yeah, actually, that's why I was advising somebody because I told somebody that you don't have to buy a book and just read it one day. No, you can decide that okay, I will read this chapter a week. The next week I read one chapter, just like that. Don't say think that you will just buy a book like that and sit down and read the whole thing because you become confused. Get a plan for reading. You may select certain chapters in the book that you like and schedule a time frame. Either you are relaxing in your house and reading a chapter, or you are eating, or you are just somewhere cooling down. That is how you have to organize yourself to read these days. Yeah, don't read everything at the same time because you become confused with so many ideas. Organize yourself. You can read a chapter, or you can spread the chapter in three sections. Read one per week, and make sure that you look at the ideas that you've read. You see how you can practicalize them, and so on and so forth. So that is the advice I give people. Yeah. Create time to
How
read something. Yeah.
how does the genuine billionaire decide on what trend they ought to follow?
Yeah. Actually, inside that book, I elaborated on so many sectors breeding billionaires. There are so many sectors of the economy breeding billionaires these days, from manufacturing to IT to sports to community involvement to social entrepreneurship. There are so many sectors breeding billionaires. And I always tell people, I've done a lot of seminars on this. I said, try to identify your niche. The niche is what you feel competent at, that you feel that you can succeed in. And identify your niche, capitalize on it, and see how you can utilize the ideas in the book to become successful in your niche. Because if you identify your niche will have your customers, your followers, and you may succeed in it. So always do that, because the world economy is so big, and the demand is there, but the preferences are too different. So always make sure that you identify your niche. There are so many sectors breeding billionaires nowadays, but look at what you see that you can excel in. Yeah, I don't want you to take something that you cannot sustain and fail within the next couple of days or years. Yeah.
How does meaning and purpose fit in to finding your specific niche?
Yeah, actually, that's where definition comes in. You have to be able to define your purpose. And from my experience as a project manager, there's always a format in implementation. You have to start with the identification of what everything you need to do. You identify it, you analyze it, you evaluate it, you set down parameters to implement it. That pattern is always very critical, because you cannot just jump into the labor market and begin to do any type of thing that you want. You have to identify what you want to do, analyze it, evaluate it, and look at implementation. You identify resources to be very confident in what you want to do. You must follow that pattern, you know.
When did you realize that identification is so key, especially for billionaires, for genuine billionaires?
Yeah, it's a key factor because, as I said, there are so many areas of the economy that you can become a billionaire. But to identify the sector that fits your criteria, because you as an individual, you have some personal criteria according to your demands, your personal demands and needs. And when you are identifying something, you look at how you can fit in your personal needs and demands. And you look at the people, you have to adapt it to the environment in which you live, adapt it to the customer that you are trying to identify, which is very important. So project identification is very, very important, because if you identify a wrong project, you ultimately fail. And that's why it becomes very critical in the preliminary session of any business environment, where you have to identify the business. And business identification is very important, because you look at the environment, you look at social factors, political factors, you look at your customers, you look at your own self, whether you are knowledgeable about what you want to do. So identification is very, very important. Yeah.
How does purpose redefine success? Unpack that.
Yeah. Because everything has to be purpose driven. Any business has to be purpose driven. And as I said, the purpose has to be well defined. And when you are defining a purpose, you look at the resources around you, you look at other environmental factors, social factors around you. Because a purpose driven project is always very successful, because you define when it's purpose driven, you have set up all the parameters for success for that particular purpose, and so on. So that's why project definition is very critical too, because it's all aligns with purpose, objectives, goals, and so on.
Let's talk a little bit about prosperity, define it, and also what role does it play in terms of service? What's the relationship between service and prosperity?
That is interesting because you are bringing me to another element that compounds society service, civil service. Because uh, a lot of people that I've observed when they are in the part of working with the government in civil service, they got confused between prosperity and service. You become a director today. What is the role of you as a director? Is it for you just to be personally prosperous, or you are there to render service? Because it becomes very confusing. Whether somebody is a director of a company, are you rendering service to the community, to the people that you represent, or you are there to accumulate wealth and be more prosperous for your own self? So you have to be able to combine the two. You are, as a director, you are trying to make the society prosperous, and you yourself, you want to be prosperous in your own way, but you must combine individual prosperity with communal prosperity. Because if prosperity is just individual, then the organization will fail. But if you combine individual prosperity and community prosperity, where everybody benefits from the project that you are implementing, then that will be great. But sometimes it's always the reverse, where people look at it because of greed. They tend to be very fraudulent. They accumulate a lot of wealth for themselves and neglect the environment that they are representing. And a lot of projects fail at the end. So there must be a relationship between individual prosperity and communal prosperity when running any type of business. And that's when the term social responsibility come in, because a lot of companies now, they get involved in social responsibility. After accumulating a lot of wealth, then they say, what can we do to the society? We should finance some social programs. We should find like food, housing, streets, and so on. Social responsibility has become so common now, and that's why inside the book I talk about social entrepreneurship, because social entrepreneurship takes care of social responsibility for businesses, so which is very important.
Give some concrete examples how the genuine billionaires of today actually do that in terms of social responsibility.
Yeah, I was taking an example of Oprah Winfrey. She's a billionaire and she's a social entrepreneur. She has accumulated a lot of wealth, and she is using the wealth now to help a lot of communities. She has built a school. She went and built a school in South Africa for girls, very unique, where she's sponsoring it to educate girls. That's a social, that's a billionaire who is doing some social. In America, yes, she's financing, giving scholarship to a lot of colleges and schools, providing housing for so many people, feeding a lot of poor people, and so on. Bill Gates is there. He's a billionaire, but he's also a social entrepreneur, because look at what the Gates Foundation is doing around the world, taking care of health issues, maternal mortality, and a lot of diseases. They help the Bill Gates Foundation is taking care of it around the world. That is a billionaire who is also a social entrepreneur, taking care of health, tackling health issues around the world. So So those are just so there are so many of them who are now social entrepreneurs, because in order to succeed as a social entrepreneur, you have to have a lot of wealth at your disposal to implement your projects. And that's what is happening. There are so many billionaires who are social entrepreneurs nowadays. Yeah.
How does inner growth, that's also important, precede external abundance? And let's define the terms as well, like inner growth and abundance in terms of genuineness.
Yeah. You see, the thing is, nowadays people are more interested in inner growth. And I think they are more interested in abundance. But your inner self, to actually define how you can actually acquire the abundance and all that, because We are all different. We individuals are all different. We are born different. Some are born with generous minds. Some are born with greedy minds. Some are born with wicked minds, and so on and so forth. And you nowadays, there are a lot of, even as I'm talking, there are a lot of billionaires who are greedy in their hearts. They have accumulated a lot of wealth, but you don't find them getting involved in social issues, taking care of the poor, taking care of the handicapped, taking care of the marginalized in society. They don't do that. Yeah, because their own personal growth is paramount to them. Their immediate family is paramount to them. So they don't care less about the society issues, which is not good. Which is not good. So you find that confusion between uh, what an individual self can do and what to the community in order to let I in order not to be very selfish and individualistic. But it's becoming very, very confusing because people want to accumulate more wealth. Somebody wants to be the richest man in the world, the wealthiest man in the world, and all that. And because of that, he neglects some social responsibilities, corporate social responsibilities that are supposed to impact other groups of people. So you find that confusion between your individual self and communal abundance and growth. And it's very tough to handle it.
And it's also hard actually to define it to some extent, right? Because you can always go in different ways about it, right? How you go about it can vary, right? From billionaire to billionaire. And therefore, sometimes it might seem not very genuine, but the thought, the thinking is maybe at the right place, right? Because we can always address different problems in different ways, and they just differ in the way we approach them, but not necessarily in the way that we agree that there is a problem. What do you think about that?
Yeah, as I said, that's rightly said because billionaires think differently. They have different approach to issues or to societal issues. Because there are some billionaires nowadays that they only want to deal with other billionaires. They don't want to deal with the lower class people. They only want to deal with the 1% who are billionaires. And but there are other billionaires who feel that I should look at people who are below me and so on. And if you look at people like George Soros has been involved. He's a billionaire, but he's very, very empathic. He has been involved with so many initiatives around the world to help the poor. But you have some other billionaires that they feel that life should only be limited to billionaires. So I can only interact with billionaires. I can only give to another billionaires. I can only eat with another billionaires. I can only travel with another billionaires. I can only talk to another billionaire. That's a very dangerous precedent that they are setting for the world. You should be able to be generous, empathic, look at the world and look at yourself and try to look at and ask yourself, what legacy will I be leaving if I believe like that? So on. So those are the challenges that we are facing. That billionaires having different thought processes of how the world should be ruled, how things should be moved, things should be run around the world. So it's a very tough challenge. But as you earlier said, individual thought is totally different, you know. And we just have to continue to see how we can write and give ideas on how people can manage wealth, create wealth, manage wealth, and transform the world, so on.
Let's talk a little bit about a mindset. What are the three most important things when it comes to mindset? What did you identify that these genuine billionaires have in common?
Yeah, you see, there are so many things that they have in common. One, when they are growing up, one critical thing in that it comes to their mind is how to be successful. And in order for them to be successful, they have to actually be able to conceive some ideas. And when they conceive some ideas, they look at how their personal attributes or their personal characteristics can conform to that particular ideas in order to be successful. Because a lot of billionaires, they grew up with a different mindset from the common man, because their own mindset, their own thought process is different. He's looking at business, he's looking at success, he's looking at the accumulation of wealth, he's looking at the society, how he wants to control the world, control people, control resources, control all the factors of production. That is the mindset of billionaires, because every billionaire wants to control all the factors of production. He wants to control the land, control the institutions, control the politics, control people, all those factors of production. The billionaire is there to control them in order to be wealthy. That is the top process.
And they also have, I guess, what I hear out from you is that they have this drive to take their destiny in their own hands. Because that's also, it's part of control, right? You don't
Definitely.
give up your outside control, right? Because if you start focusing outside of you, then you know you lose control. You can only control how you react to the environment outside of you.
Yeah, actually, billionaires want to have absolute control over what I've said, over the factors of production. They want to have absolute control. Because if you don't have absolute control over those factors of production, then you lose it and somebody will take over and so on. So they grow up with that mindset. They have to control everything. Yeah.
Now, second last question. What is the most important takeaway, according to you, from this book in one sentence?
Develop your mindset, develop your ideas, develop your knowledge, and let your ingenuity define who you are.
Beautiful. I absolutely love that. John Morfaw, last question. What makes you truly feel alive?
I'm sitting here as I'm telling you, I'm a kidney recipient because I had a kidney transplant last December. It's 1 year now. And it's because of my spirit that I'm even talking to you. Because last year I didn't know that I would be alive. I was very sick. I was on dialysis for 5 years before I had a kidney transplant. And luckily, I had my transplant through John Hopkins Hospital in Baltimore. That's the best hospital in the world. And
Beautiful. What
I
a
had
gift.
and that's what is keeping me alive. A lot of people look at me, they are so surprised that I'm even talking, because from January to March, I was so weak after the transplant. I couldn't talk, I couldn't walk. I was restless. I thought I would die. But luckily, the the kidney is okay. I've been told that it's 100% functional. That's why I'm talking to you. And when I had a lot of time, because the doctors told me to stay at home and rest, I said, okay, with all this time that I have, I cannot be watching TV 24 hours. What can I do? So I decided that let me revisit all my literary projects since I'm almost home, always home. So I went online. I've been writing all my life from the 80s. I've been writing articles here and there. That's why I decided that let me go online and revisit my literary work and do second editions of my books that are published. And with all the time that I had, that is why I've been able to come up with those two editions now. You know, and that's my spirit. I'm very positive with my life and so on. And people are so amazed with me that look at the transplant patient that he's able to talk, he's able to do so many things, write books and so on. That's my spirit. And that's how I grew up.
That's beautiful. I can't believe you're such a beautiful soul. Thank you so much, John Morfaw, for being on the show. And hopefully, we will be able to keep this going because you are truly a blessing to myself and really to the world.
Thank you very much.
John Morfaw. Everyone who is listening, thank you so much for listening. And and we will publish this episode in a couple of weeks. This was a live YouTube live, and it will be available only until this evening, and then it will disappear and it will come up again as a podcast and a video. However, if you really want to get access to this episode immediately after tomorrow, then you can buy very special price for only $19.95 for a lifelong membership of the Why Knowledge Matters. Really, go on programs.the-ykm.com and get a copy, because this is a very special price for $19.95, and you will have a lifelong access to all the episodes, and you will always get access so much earlier, weeks earlier than anyone else. Thank you so much again, John Morfaw, and everyone who was listening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Yannick. Yeah.
That's why knowledge matters. Make your life a masterpiece. Visit now programs.the-ykm.com.